He was supposed to be loyal. He was trained to disappear others, not to be disappeared himself. But when Nathan Cole found out what they were hiding, he made sure no one would ever forget. This is a story they tried to erase. Welcome to Shadows of Authority. It was a kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It strangles it. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead, flickering weakly. Nathan Cole sat at the metal table, wrists chained, blood crusting at the corner of his mouth. His suit, the same black press uniform he'd worn to presidential briefings, was now torn, stained, and stripped of its badge. Across from him sat Avery Maddox, Deputy Director of Internal Intelligence. Once his friend, now the man orchestrating his destruction. Avery slid a single photo across the table. Nathan stared at it. A corpse in a hotel bathtub. Eyes wide open. Throat cut. A finger missing. "Tell me you didn't do it," Avery said calmly, as if this were routine. Nathan didn't answer, because the truth was worse than the accusation. He hadn't killed the man, but he knew who had, and he knew why the service was letting it happen. 72 hours earlier, Nathan had been special agent in charge of executive integrity oversight, a quiet, clean title meant to mask the real job, vetting federal agents, silencing leaks, containing scandals before they reached the press. It was never written in policy, but in the service, some jobs were whispered through bloodlines. Nathan was loyal, until the Denver file crossed his desk. The Denver file. Red stamp classified. Contents: 3 photos. A missing journalist. A dead whistleblower from an IRS black budget team. A memo marked with a code Nathan recognized. Savior 17. Savior 17 wasn't supposed to exist anymore. It was a Cold War relic, an operation that trained agents to kill and erase targets on American soil for national continuity. Disbanded in 1993. At least, that's what the public was told. But Savior 17 was alive. It had evolved, and now it was using the U.S. Secret Service as a cover. The vanishing. 2 days after receiving the file, Nathan's apartment was cleaned. Not searched. Cleaned. Photos of his late wife. Gone. His laptop, factory reset. His dog, poisoned. He was given a choice without words. Forget what you saw, or disappear. He didn't forget. Instead, Nathan copied the file, buried one copy in a safety deposit box under an alias only he remembered, sent another to a former hacker he once helped escape indictment, Elena Rios. She owed him her life. Now, she'd return the favor. But Nathan wasn't fast enough. Savior 17 had already moved. They killed the journalist, then the hacker, then the banker who rented out the deposit box. All 3 deaths were ruled accidents. The service didn't investigate, because the service authorized it. The setup. Nathan was arrested at 4:17 a.m., dragged from his apartment barefoot by agents who didn't wear IDs. His arrest wasn't on record. No Miranda rights. No booking. Just a hood over his head and a 7-hour ride to a black site buried beneath a Department of Agriculture field office in Idaho. The man in the bathtub, he was Nathan's informant, set to testify, now dead. And Nathan had been positioned as a killer, weapon planted, prints manipulated, narrative perfected, all by people who once trusted him with nuclear codes. The deal. Back in the interrogation room, Avery leaned in. "Confess, or you'll disappear. Not into prison. Into history. Like the others." Nathan looked up, slow and hollow. "I already did disappear," he whispered. "Now I'm just coming back." The black site, they called it Echo 6. It didn't exist on any federal registry. To get there, they drove Nathan blindfolded for hours, then transferred him through a decommissioned freight elevator in what used to be a grain processing plant. For levels below ground, there were no windows, no clocks, no legal names, just rooms, doors that locked from the outside, walls too thick to scream through. And Avery, always smiling like the devil in a borrowed suit. The escape. Nathan knew he couldn't count on a rescue. There was no court, no lawyer, only choices. Confess, or be erased. So he waited, watched, catalogued. There were 7 guards total. One of them, Kellen, young, nervous, southern accent, hesitated when tightening the cuffs. Nathan mocked him. Every third shift, Kellen worked alone during corridor handoff. Nathan didn't sleep that night. At 3:16, Kellen opened the cell. Nathan moved before he could blink. A headbutt to the nose. Kellen's gun drawn, then yanked down and fired into his own foot. Screams filled the hallway as Nathan yanked him back inside, slammed the door, cuffed him to the radiator, and took the uniform. 4 minutes later, he was moving through the corridor disguised as the enemy. He knew the route. He'd built similar sites before. That's what made this betrayal sting the most. He taught them how to hide things like him. The surface. Nathan emerged through a ventilation duct behind the processing facility. He didn't run. He crawled, bleeding, shaking, but invisible. 2 miles later, he found a payphone behind a liquor store that still smelled like 1983. He dialed a number no one else alive should have remembered. "This is Marshall. I need extraction." Burned. Full ghost protocol. Silence. Then a click. Then coordinates. Then nothing. That was the last favor he had left. Reborn in the shadows. By the time the sun rose, Nathan Cole was no longer in the system. His birth record flagged deceased. His financials frozen. His home condemned. His badge deactivated. The man who once protected presidents now existed only on paper as a rogue agent wanted for murder. And that was exactly what he needed. The targets. There were 3 names in the original Savior 17 revival memo. Dirk Fallon, Deputy Director of Covert Stabilization. Michelle Arden, National Intelligence Oversight Liaison. Eli Barrett, Private Sector Contractor, ex-CIA, now running retired wet ops. Nathan knew these 3 were spider points. Everything connected to them. And one of them had ordered the kill that started it all. But they didn't know he was free. Not yet. He would make sure that when they found out, it would be too late. Eli Barrett didn't exist in government databases anymore. He was scrubbed in 2015. But Nathan knew where ghosts went when the world stopped watching. Private contracts, foreign ops, black budgets. He tracked Barrett through old mission manifests, cross-referenced with shell companies that specialize in non-attributable risk mitigation. That's how he found ArcLight Group, an elite contractor operating out of an energy logistics front in Lexington, Virginia. ArcLight had a history. 6 contractors killed in Venezuela under mysterious conditions. 3 missing persons reports tied to former investigative journalists. 1 severed head mailed to a Bolivian judge who subpoenaed a U.S. wire fraud case. Barrett was ArcLight's invisible founder. Nathan booked a bus under the name John Carr. No phone. No trace. By the time he arrived in Lexington, he had shaved his head, changed his gait, and taught himself to limp on the right leg. ArcLight's headquarters looked like a repurposed tech startup. Glass facade, minimalist design, security solutions on the door. Nathan watched for 2 days from an empty building across the street. Guards rotated every 6 hours. Shift supervisor left at 6:45 p.m. sharp. The night crew was younger, less experienced. He struck at 1:32 a.m. on a Sunday, wearing a stolen ArcLight windbreaker and faked access badge. Walked in like he belonged there. No alarms. Barrett's office was on the 2nd floor, West Wing. No nameplate. Just a black door and a retina scanner. Nathan didn't have his eye. But he had something better, a bottle of industrial-strength fluorescent dust that revealed prints on keypad glass. Took 17 minutes. He was in. Inside Barrett's office, Nathan found exactly what he hoped for, and worse. Hard drives, paper trails, a server rack disguised as a climate control unit, and 1 thick file marked Project Ivory Wasp. Inside, names of informants, surveillance contracts, 2 folders labeled Alpha Subject, Cole, Nathan. They hadn't just planned his fall. They'd profiled him for 6 years, studied his weaknesses, mapped his connections, filed psychological triggers. There were even notes about his wife's death, marked as opportunity event. She hadn't died of a stroke. She'd been eliminated, and Nathan had never even known. He sat in that office for nearly an hour, breathing fire into his lungs. Then he took 1 photo from the folder, just 1, and set the rest on fire. Let them wonder which pieces he took. Let the fear bloom. By Monday, Barrett servers were down. By Wednesday, 2 ArcLight executives were missing. By Friday, the story leaked to foreign press. American contractor linked to deaths of journalists, black budget cover-ups. Barrett fled the U.S. within 48 hours. But Nathan wasn't done. Barrett's face was now on every back-channel hit list, Russian, Israeli, even the rogue Iranian networks. Nathan didn't have to kill him. He just had to unleash the truth. Target 2, Michelle Ardent. Michelle Ardent was a phantom operating in plain sight. On paper, she was a National Intelligence Oversight Liaison, the woman tasked with holding secret programs accountable. In reality, she authorized black ops, buried whistleblowers, and rebranded failed covert programs to avoid political backlash. Michelle didn't just play the game. She designed it, and she was good, very, very good. Nathan knew he couldn't walk straight at her. She was insulated, lobbyists shielding her moves, congressional aides laundering her communications, defense contractors funding her protection. No, you didn't attack Michelle Ardent head-on. You eroded her from the inside. You made her allies doubt her, made her bosses see her as a liability, not an asset. Nathan went after her armor first. The tactic, whispers of exposure. He found Brandon Kell, her chief of staff, 32 years old, ambitious, dangerously naive. Kell had 2 secrets: a quiet affair with a minor staffer at Homeland Security, an unreported offshore account in the Cayman Islands, filled with money he couldn't explain. Nathan blackmailed him quietly. No threats, just a single burner email. Do you know what Michelle would do if she knew you were a vulnerability? Or do you want her bosses to find out first? Kell folded within days, fed Nathan schedules, private memos, travel itineraries. Through him, Nathan slipped invisible hands around Michelle's throat. The trap. Michelle Ardent loved control. So Nathan built a mirror. He faked an internal leak implicating her in an authorized surveillance of senators. He forged emails, built a fake whistleblower testimony, carefully, coldly. Let the rumor bloom across the Capitol. Her enemies pounced. Committees demanded closed-door interviews. Investigations opened. By the time Michelle realized no one actually had evidence, that it was all a ghost built from her own paranoia, it was too late. She was isolated, poisoned, abandoned. They didn't kill her. They simply made her irrelevant. A political corpse. Exactly what Nathan wanted. The last target, Avery Maddox. Nathan saved him for last. Not because Avery was the most dangerous. Not because he was the hardest to reach. But because Avery was the architect. The one who invited Nathan into the service. The one who trained him to believe in the system. The one who betrayed him without hesitation when the game got too dirty. Killing Avery wouldn't be revenge. It would be surgery. Removing the tumor that had poisoned every oath, every uniform, every badge Nathan once bled for. Avery had gone underground after the Barrett and Ardent collapses. Still in D.C., but no longer attending meetings, no longer issuing public memos. Nathan tracked him through encrypted burner accounts, offshore VPN trails, and payment logs hidden in foreign defense contracts. It led him to a safe house disguised as an urban resilience think tank near Foggy Bottom. 10th floor. Minimal staff. 1 reinforced panic room. Perfect. Nathan didn't plan to knock. The night raid. He struck at 3:33 a.m., the dead hour when security was lowest and men dream of safety. Disabling cameras with a low-frequency burst jammer. Neutralizing door alarms with a cloned entry key card stolen weeks earlier. He moved through the building like a ghost. No bullets. No flashbangs. Just silence. He reached Avery's suite in under 9 minutes. The door was ajar. Almost too easy. Avery was waiting inside, sitting behind a mahogany desk, a half-empty glass of bourbon in one hand. No weapon. Just a slow, poisonous smile. "I was wondering when you'd stop playing Ghost," Avery said, voice soft as paper cuts. Nathan didn't speak. Just stood there, watching, waiting. Avery leaned back, studying him like an old experiment gone rogue. "You always were the best, Nathan. That's why we picked you." Nathan's jaw clenched. Picked, not recruited. Not trained. Picked. Like cattle at auction. Picked for what? Nathan said finally, voice low. Avery's smile widened. To replace us. To continue the real work. But you broke. You chose conscience. He said it like a sleigh. We weren't corrupt, Nathan. We were necessary. Nathan stepped closer. Necessary doesn't leave bodies in bathtubs. Necessary doesn't erase children who ask the wrong questions. Avery shrugged. Collateral. The country sleeps at night because monsters like us keep the nightmares at bay. Nathan stared at him, realized there was no humanity left. Only a machine pretending to bleed. Avery thought Nathan came for blood. He thought there would be a struggle, gunfire, death in a blaze of self-righteous fury. But Nathan had learned. Violence was too easy, too merciful. Instead, Nathan pulled a USB stick from his pocket, tossed it onto Avery's desk. Everything, every file, every death, every lie, uploaded, set to trigger public, released the moment my heart stops beating. Avery's hand froze on the bourbon glass. Nathan smiled, cold and empty. You taught me to be thorough. He turned without another word, left Avery sitting there, drowning in the knowledge that the machine he'd built would burn, that he would live just long enough to watch it happen, and then be forgotten. Within 48 hours, multiple journalists received dead man switch data dumps. Senate hearings launched emergency closed sessions. Federal agents scrambled to find who had leaked thousands of classified internal operations. But they found nothing, no trace, because Nathan Cole no longer existed. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a myth, a story whispered in the alleys between government offices, a warning. Be careful what you bury. Sometimes it crawls back. Within 48 hours, multiple journalists received dead man switch data dumps. Senate hearings launched emergency closed sessions. Federal agents scrambled to find who had leaked thousands of classified internal operations, but they found nothing, no trace, because Nathan Cole no longer existed. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a myth, a story whispered in the alleys between government offices, a warning. Be careful what you bury. Sometimes it crawls back. Months later, in a weathered mailbox outside a small law office in Cleveland, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a thumb drive, a single note in Nathan's handwriting. Tell them everything. No heroes, no survivors, only witnesses. Elena Rios, the hacker Nathan once saved, did as she was asked. She spent weeks sifting through the files. Names, dates, operations that made Iran-Contra look like child's play. And then she published it all. No filters, no commentary, just raw truth. The country convulsed. But Nathan's name never appeared once. It was never about fame. It was about memory. Rumors grew. Some said Nathan fled to Eastern Europe, hiding among mercenaries who didn't care about past sins. Others claimed he built a network of ex-agents who still believed in real justice, whispering, sabotaging, leaking from within. One story said he lived in Alaska under a fake name, working as a carpenter, rebuilding things slowly, quietly, after a life spent tearing lies apart. Another said he was dead, not by enemy hands, but by his own, choosing peace on his terms before the machine could take it from him again. No one really knew. And that was the point. Ghosts don't need gravestones. They need memory. Nathan Cole didn't just bring down a network. He planted seeds, ones even he couldn't predict. Across the country, men and women in law enforcement, intelligence, even politics, started asking forbidden questions. Why are some programs off books, even to Congress? Where does black budget money really go? Why do so many whistleblowers disappear before trials? His ghost haunted every confidential briefing. His legend fed every new internal leak. The agencies called it the Cole effect. A virus of doubt, a contagion of memory, a war against amnesia. It didn't take long for others to organize, unofficially, anonymous groups, whistleblowers, disillusioned field agents. They didn't trust the system to save itself anymore, so they operated like insurgents inside the machine, passing information hand to hand, creating encrypted archives, saving names, faces, stories that would otherwise vanish. They didn't call themselves revolutionaries. They called themselves witnesses. And everywhere the service tried to silence, witnesses amplified. Every time a lie was told, a counter-story rose to meet it. Every black site uncovered. Every name remembered. Every injustice burned into digital stone. Savior 18. But power doesn't die cleanly. The collapse of Savior 17 left a vacuum. And in Washington, vacuums don't stay empty. From the ashes, a new project began whispering through dark channels. Savior 18. Stronger, slicker, more protected by legal frameworks designed to look humanitarian. It promised domestic stability through enhanced surveillance. It promised proactive loyalty programs. It promised safety. But the witnesses were ready this time, because Nathan Cole had taught them. The greatest danger isn't in the darkness. It's in the comfort of forgetting the dark exists. The last sighting. 7 years after the collapse of Savior 17, a U.S. Marshal in Montana submitted an unofficial report. No badge ID, no body cam footage, just a paragraph in a log file no one was supposed to see. White male, late 40s, scar under left jaw, spoke in short sentences, asked for a black coffee, no cream, left a $100 bill, drove a '95 Jeep with no plates. When I asked for his name, he just said, "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who's watching." The marshal was later found dead in a hunting accident. No autopsy requested. The building once known as Echo 6 was quietly demolished in 2031. They paved over it with a federal training site, planted grass, put up a bench. But someone carved into the concrete foundation before it dried. "I was loyal. You made me a ghost. Now I am your memory." It was signed with one letter, N. To this day, trainees whisper about the spot. Some say if you visit at night, your radio crackles with static. Others say you hear footsteps, pacing, methodical, like someone still watches the exits. 3 years later, the world had moved on. Barrett was dead, found frozen in a Romanian meat locker. Michelle Arden had vanished, reportedly living under a new name in a South American wellness commune. Avery Maddox, no longer in office, no longer in power. But power never truly dies. It just changes masks. The rebirth, Savior 18. The new initiative was called Savior 18. Its public name, Safe Base. A domestic stability program. A civilian scoring system using behavioral pattern analysis to pre-identify threats. Social media history. Online purchases. Even eye movement on public transit platforms. SafeBase claimed to predict unrest. What it really did was catalog dissent. People with unfavorable civic patterns began to vanish again, quietly. Whistleblowers were digitally erased before they could speak. And behind it all, an anonymous AI model so deeply classified that even the Director of National Intelligence couldn't access its full blueprint. It was perfect, clean, painless, and it was working. Malcolm Frost was 27, a Harvard-educated behavioral analyst brought into SafeBase through a fellowship program. Smart, efficient, believed in the mission. Until the Anderson case. A 12-year-old flagged as a pre-extremist based on nothing more than the books he checked out at school. Malcolm requested a review, was told not to ask again. The next day, the boy's mother was arrested for obstructing a federal inquiry. The boy was institutionalized. The file vanished. Malcolm started digging. The Ghost Protocol. It took him months. Burners. Hush meetings. Old hard drives passed hand-to-hand through untraceable drop points. At the end of the trail, he found a server in Iceland. Untraceable. Untouchable. Inside it, a hidden directory titled, "If They Rebuild It," thousands of documents. Source code for the SafeBase AI. Redacted intelligence ops, personal logs, and at the center, a video file marked, "For whoever comes next." It was grainy, shot in black and white. Just a man sitting in front of a broken mirror, eyes hollow, beard gray. Nathan Cole. He looked straight into the camera. Spoke one line. Asterisk, asterisk, you survived the purge. That means you already know they're lying. Now burn it all. Asterisk, asterisk. Then silence. No goodbye. No epilogue. just the sound of a clock ticking in the background. Malcolm Frost did what Nathan could not. He leaked everything. Not to the press, not to the courts, to the world. Open source dumps, community-audited datasets, video confessions, names, photos, location data, even the AI model itself, uploaded to the public domain with a warning. Do not run this. Study it, understand how they used it, then destroy it. The collapse. SafeBase was dead within 72 hours. Savior 18 was disavowed. 4 senators resigned. A 5th shot himself live on a video conference with NATO. The AI system became a myth. No government would admit they'd ever created it. But everyone knew the truth. Because truth, once unburied, has teeth. They say Nathan Cole lived his last years in the silence between signals. No bank accounts. No fingerprints. No cell towers. But those who knew how to look could trace his footprints. A suicide prevention counselor in Detroit who received an envelope filled with black site inmate records and a handwritten note. This time, save them before the rope. A retired FBI archivist in Nevada who found his garage broken into, not to steal, but to leave behind an encrypted hard drive. A grieving father in North Carolina whose daughter was taken during a national security sweep. He found his daughter's sealed file under his porch, wrapped in plastic. Inside, proof she'd been innocent. The document was signed with one letter. Agent Malcolm Frost went into hiding after the leak. Not from enemies, from followers. People began calling him the new witness. Some wanted answers. Others wanted orders. A few just wanted to believe in something again. He didn't want any of it. He changed his name, moved to Montana, built furniture, watched the news like an addict with a guilty conscience. Until one night, his mailbox held an unmarked box. Inside, a chessboard, one pawn missing, and a note. Asterisk, asterisk, never become a king. Kings get hunted. Stay small. Stay moving. Stay free. Asterisk, asterisk. He never spoke publicly again. Years later, a new program appeared quietly in China, then Brazil, then parts of the European Union. Civilian scoring. Predictive policing. Emotion recognition through public surveillance. It wasn't called Savior 19, but it smelled the same, and with it came a new resistance. They called themselves Ghost Witnesses, not a group, but an idea, decentralized, stateless, rooted in the legacy of Nathan Cole. They used AI against the machine, built anonymizers, recruited quietly, leaked loudly, every time the system tried to rewrite itself. The witnesses were already inside. An old man walks a gravel trail in the Yukon territories. No phone, no ID, no sound but the crunch of boots and wind. At the edge of a cliff, he stops, looks out over endless trees. He pulls out a lighter, flicks it once, twice. The flame catches a corner of a folder, yellowed, worn, labeled. Ivory Wasp, original dossiers. He burns it, not out of fear, out of completion. As a flame consumed the paper, he turns to a younger figure waiting in the distance, wrapped in a scarf, watching silently. Nathan hands him a USB drive, says only 4 words, "Now it's your turn," then walks into the fog. Never seen again. Asterisk, asterisk, the system built him to erase others. But he taught the erased to remember. And that's what killed it. Asterisk, asterisk.